This is 138 Openings of Wisdom by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the Ramchal. Openings 5 and 6 fall under the superheading, the Sefirot. And opening 5 is titled, The Sefirot were an innovation in that they are visible lights, whereas Ein Sof is not visible. The Sefirot are lights that were permitted to be seen, which is not so in the case of the simple light of Ein Sof, blessed be He. The subject of all the investigations of the Kabbalah is the Sefirot. Therefore, this is what must be explained first. The proposition consists of two parts. Part 1, the Sefirot are lights. This tells us what the Sefirot are. Part 2, which is not so in the case of the simple light. This tells us in which way the Sefirot are different in their nature from Ein Sof. For in order to understand the Sefirot, it is necessary to understand in what way they were an innovation introduced for the sake of the creation. This is explained in Part 1. Initially, however, there was only Ein Sof, blessed be He. If so, in order to know the Sefirot, it is necessary to know in what way they differ from their original state and from Ein Sof. Part 1. The Sefirot are lights. It is through the Sefirot that godliness unfolds or extends. We cannot refer to the unfolding or extension, hitpashtut, of godliness as anything but a radiation of light, ha'ara, for the truth is that godliness does not extend, since the concepts of extension and change are not applicable to God. However, we call the radiance that spreads from Him the unfolding or revelation of godliness, and accordingly we say that the Sefirot are radiations of light. Indeed, we cannot call godliness anything other than a radiation of light. In truth, no word, name, or term can adequately be applied to godliness. But since it is impossible to speak without words, we must call it by some name. However, we choose one that is somewhat less remote from godliness than others. Light is the finest and most subtle of all physical phenomena, and accordingly it is less remote from godliness than other phenomena. If so, the term radiation of light is the nearest we can choose. Even so, you must understand that we are not talking about a radiation of physical light. We are applying the term radiation of light only to give it some name. That were permitted to be seen. For the difference between the Sefirot and Ein Sof, blessed be He, is that it was made possible for the Sefirot to be seen, in the sense of being spiritually apprehended. This means two things. Firstly, it means that the Sefirot are capable of being seen, though this does not imply that the Sefirot must necessarily be visible. For indeed there are exalted Sefirot that are not visible even in the higher realms. What is implied is that they are fit and able to be seen. Should it happen that the spectator is prevented from seeing them, this does not detract from their nature of being potentially visible. However, the light of Ein Sof, blessed be He, cannot be seen at all, because of its intrinsic essence, which is unseeable. Secondly, in saying that the Sefirot were permitted to be seen, we are not saying that they were intrinsically visible. The light of the Sefirot is not a particular kind of light that is visible in its intrinsic nature, as opposed to the light of Ein Sof, blessed be He, which is not. What changed in the act of creation was that the Sefirot became visible. It became possible for them to be seen because Ein Sof wanted it so. If the light of the Sefirot was a particular kind of light that was visible in its intrinsic nature, we would have to say that the Sefirot were not an innovation. For what exists in something as part of its intrinsic nature is found in it throughout its existence. If the ability of the Sefirot to be seen were part of their intrinsic nature, then as long as the light of the Sefirot existed, it would have to be visible. What we must say is that the light of the Sefirot cannot have been new, but that the revelation of this light, the ability of the Sefirot to be seen, is what was new. This is because the Sefirot are godliness. Change from state to state is simply not applicable to godliness. If so, the light of the Sefirot is not something new. The inference is that the light of the Sefirot was there from before. If the visibility of this light were part of its intrinsic nature, it would always have been visible. In that case, what was new? What was new was that God willed and made it possible for the light of the Sephiroth to be seen. He gave this permission at precisely the moment he wished, not before. The change was not in the nature of godliness. The change was in its being revealed to recipients. From this you can understand why it is so appropriate to refer to the Sephiroth as emanated light, or Neetzal, for on the level of what the spiritual eye can see, light was emanated to our eyes, a light that could be seen. This was not the case at first. And if permission were granted to the eye to see, we would come to recognize that everything has one root, Ein Sof, who cannot be seen. There is one light that exists through him on a level such that it can be seen, and this is the light of the Sephiroth. If so, let us call it a light that emanated from Ayin, from no thing, i.e., from that which cannot be conceived. Part 2. Which is not so in the case of the simple light of Ein Sof, blessed be he. The simple light is that which simply cannot be described, defined, or categorized in any way. It is impossible to say anything about his light. Since there is no word or name fit to be applied to Ein Sof, blessed be he, we will refer to him in the only way that we can, using the expression simple light. However, we qualify this by negating any limitation that may appear to be implied in him on account of the term we have chosen. For in truth, no such limitation is intended. Thus we say that the light of Ein Sof cannot be seen. This is the difference between Ein Sof, blessed be he, and the Sephiroth, and that is the ending of opening 5.